Geospatial intelligence is really the foundation. There are some pretty senior people who like to talk about it this way. Everything and everyone have to be somewhere. And that means that when you're going to make decisions or you're going to take actions, you can receive information from lots of different sources, but ultimately if you're going to move from A to B and then do something, whether doing something is a humanitarian activity where you're doing disaster relief, or it could be a military operation. If you're going to go somewhere and do something, that's where geospatial comes to the forefront. So really all of national security's various missions rely on geospatial intelligence. Last several years, you've seen a much more acute awareness of the need for geospatial intelligence, particularly real time, in support of homeland security. So if you think about whether it's border, understanding what's happening on the border, are there adversaries trying to sneak across the border? Are there tunnels being built under the border? Are there activities coming in that are seaborne? In each of those cases, the ability to observe, to sense, to take that information, to tie it together with other sources of information, then to navigate, for the operator to navigate to where that event is occurring and to do it in the most effective and efficient way, that depends on geospatial intelligence. So I would say in the last several years, you really see much more use of it in homeland security. There are a lot of people who are familiar with the very large, expensive, great capability that exists with the traditional satellites that we have for geospatial collection. But they're not as familiar with the fact that we can do great things with small satellites. And why is it that today, for a thousandth of the cost and for a fraction of the size, you can do something good? It's because we've kept up with technology. Many of these innovative companies have used the advances in consumer electronics and automotive-grade electronics, as well as changes in manufacturing processes and materials, changes that have occurred and continue to occur in computer processing. Let's see, also communications architectures and bandwidths increasing. Capitalizing on those changes and the innovations in each of those areas has permitted us to be able to go very small yet capable with satellites. So yes, innovation and rapid turnover of technology can and does affect national security. I would characterize that differently and say, how are others catching up with Leidos? Because Leidos historically has been on the cutting edge of technology. We're a science and engineering firm. And so I'll give you an example. We just talked about small satellites. Our company designed something called the commercially hosted infrared payload, CHIRP, which was a very small, very lightweight sensor that went into geosynchronous orbit, was hosted on a commercial communications satellite, and for a tiny fraction of the cost of a large satellite's cost, we were able to do a large fraction of the requirements. So it can stare at the Earth, a quarter of the Earth, continuously. That's an example. Our company does stay not only ahead, but I would say that we are very much about breaking new ground in terms of technologies. What you're referring to, too, is the idea of integrating systems, including being able to integrate both COTS, GOTS, proprietary, open sources, software code. That's what we do. We are known as a company that can take the best of various pieces and then bring that together into an integrated whole. So we're a systems integrator as well as a system engineer, although we do, again, do breakthroughs in certain areas. Let me give you an example. We are very much involved in supporting military operations with multi-int, we talk about geospatial intelligence and the power of geospatial intelligence, but the real power is multi-int, where you can take human sources, signal intelligence, measurement and signatures intelligence, open sources, and then tie all that together and drape it over a geospatial foundation real time. Well, for the military, we do that. We have something called Blue Devil as an example, where it's an aircraft that we've integrated SIGINT capability that's real time to broad area, high definition imagery, video, high definition, real time video, integrate all that together, and then to be able to process it together and analyze it together. So it's the idea of taking different things that each are valuable, but bringing them together into one whole that's even more valuable. The government today, as you've noted, is looking at two ways to get their data. This is geospatial, your magazine, so let me give you a geospatial example. The National Geospatial Intelligence Agency just recently released their commercial strategy. And in that strategy, they talk about two ways to buy geospatial intelligence information. One way is the traditional way, where they'll have the data, the systems provide directly to them the bits, if you will, right, the ones and zeros, and then they will work with that information. Another way that they intend to do is to have a service where a company like Leidos would do the analytics. We would use disparate sources of imagery and also other sources of data, look for changes, look for interesting things that the agency would be interested in, and then alert them that this change has occurred and then send that to them. So I think you're going to find that customers are going to move more and more into a hybrid model where they have some things that are unique, where they need to continue to do it in a more traditional way, but more and more you'll see a desire to have a firm provide as a service a complete set of information. The idea about real-time information and how do you turn it into actionable information for a decision maker or an action taker. You're quite right that there are a lot of sensors. There's no problem with sensors. We've got plenty of sensors. What the challenge is how do you take all of that different data, then combine it in a way where you're not overwhelming an analyst or an operator. Think of it this way. An NGA analyst, they want to use open sources and tie it together with multi-int and tie all that to GeoInt. But many analysts would admit that they don't have enough time in the day to do that. So you're talking about real time and actionable, but if you spend most of your time discovering the data and formatting the data so that you can start to analyze the data, it's very hard to keep up with real time flow. So what's required is automation. And in fact, Leidos, that's one of the key aspects that we provide to customers, is some people call it change detection, where we can take information real time, run algorithms against it in real time, and then look for change. And then that change that's important to that customer or to that operator, that change is what's sent. And so that drastically reduces the amount of time that an analyst or an operator has to spend hunting for something new. And then that gets you closer to what you're describing, which is something just happened, let's do something now. It closes down that timeline closer and closer to real time. Leidos, I think, is fairly well known both in government but also in industry as a company that leans forward and looks for new partnerships. So we are always looking for small companies that we can bring onto our teams, and we mentor many small companies because we understand that, first of all, we don't have all the solutions, and secondly, that's not who we are. We are about integrating many good solutions into a greater solution. So it is about finding, collaborating, partnering with new ideas, different people, different companies. The other aspect of that, though, is to help the customers to collaborate. So a company like Leidos, who works with all of the military, all of the intelligence agencies, Homeland Security as well as other customers, we have an understanding of what other people are doing because we're helping them. And so sometimes what we'll end up doing is helping customer A to know that customer B has a similar issue or project, and if the two of them work together, they could maybe both do something even greater. So we'll do that all the time, helping our customers to collaborate.